evening and a very warm welcome to the viewers from all over the world, or good morning, depending on where you are. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the CEO's Chair is a unique platform where we showcase inspiring stories of successful CEOs. We give you an insight into their mindset and not only discuss their challenges, but also help you understand their definitions of success and leadership. Today is actually our 43rd episode, and we have another such inspiring story and guest with us today, Piyush Kumar, founder and CEO at Router. Piyush, welcome once again to the CEO's Chair.
Hi, Siddharth. Thanks a lot for inviting me for this particular chat. I have been following your work for quite some time, and I was quite surprised when you asked me to be a part of it. So I'm very happy to be here. And I hope my story, my company's story is interesting for people who are, live with us right now.
No, it absolutely is, Piyush, and that's one of the reasons why I reached out to you, because you're doing such interesting work in a comparatively new domain. So I think more and more people definitely need to know about it. So while a lot of the attendees, I think, already know about you, Piyush, I just wanted to share a few lines about your journey so far. You graduated from Delhi University. You worked with companies such as Dish TV, and I believe you have a work experience of almost 14 years, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
And then after leaving Dish, you joined Rado Watches as head of marketing, in which you were responsible for some exceptional growth within that company over the last couple of years.
Yes.
And then 2016 is when the entrepreneurial bug hit you, and that's when Router came into fruition or came into reality.
Yes, absolutely.
And from my understanding, Router is a sports and gaming community-based platform. And some incredible numbers, Piyush, you've got about 5 million active users monthly, 10 million overall active users, and you're looking at having more than 20 million plus users by the end of the IPL. Are those accurate numbers?
Yeah. You are very close to the numbers that we are expecting. Our growth has been quite steep over the last 2-3 months. So yeah, hopefully we should better that number if all goes well.
No, absolutely. Knock on wood. I wish you and the team tremendous success. So, Piyush, 2020 has been very exciting for everyone in more ways than one. How have you fared as a CEO, as a person over the last couple of months?
Well, 2020 is, I think, it has turned out to be a year where we all are getting tested at different levels. And for us, it was an incredible opportunity that actually came in with COVID. So while at the beginning of the year, we were doing quite well in terms of sports content, in terms of the UGC content, which we had started developing, last year. And then COVID happened. Everything that we were building was around sports, and then everything stopped, right? And this is always a very interesting situation for companies where you suddenly are looking at, staying relevant. So thanks to a lot of research that we had done last year, we had done a lot of preliminary work to figure how Router will eventually get into gaming. And we had figured that game streaming is a very, very important part of the entire ecosystem. And we said whenever we get a window, we'll like to start that, because sports and gaming complement each other pretty well. And that's when COVID happened. My team immediately, all of them got together without taking even a day's rest. And we started developing a game streaming technology. We launched it in record time of almost 5 to 6 weeks. We started building a community around it because we had already built community around sports. So there was a lot of learning that we actually took in tech as well as in community. And in the last 2.5, 3 months, we have seen amazing growth. The overall gaming market in India is growing very, very fast. And a very sizable portion of that audience is actually also streaming their content or consuming content of big streamers who have a very good reach. And I think everything put together, it looks like we have hit something nice, and our growth has been pretty steep. And more importantly, sports, which was sort of paused initially, and then it started with England playing cricket, English football, a lot of tennis started. For India, the sports starts tomorrow, which is IPL, right? And that is going to be a huge one, because all of us are just waiting to see Indian players play, and it's going to be a 55 days or 55 evenings. We all are only going to talk about cricket. So I think, a lot of things are falling in place. We hope that we are growing faster and we are able to serve all our users well.
Great. No, I know that you're an avid sports person yourself. You've always been interested in sports. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about your specific plans for the IPL just a little bit down the line. But I wanted to understand, Piyush, when you decided to leave your corporate career and start something of your own, was there a specific catalyst moment that happened, or is it something that you actually planned out over the years and then took a calculated decision to leave the corporate world?
No, so it all started in 2010. I was called for one of the marketing seminars, and I was asked to make a presentation on my understanding, or I had to pick a topic on marketing, and
Mhm.
that's when I actually picked sports marketing as one of the topics, and I sort of made a presentation. I was working with Dish at that point in time, and after the presentation, I suddenly realized that during that research of 1.5 months that I actually spent trying to understand that market well. And always had a passion to play and to follow sports and everything. So everything came together. I made the presentation, and then it went off very well. It was a 1 hour presentation, but the Q&A went for nearly 1.5 hours, and suddenly
Wow.
everybody was talking about it. And then people, and this is 2010. So suddenly a lot of people said that why don't you look at a career in sports and why don't you start something of your own, etc. And that was the first time it came. And then the next 4 5 years, India saw a huge growth in terms of startup ecosystem. So many, such amazing companies like Paytm, Flipkart, Zomato, Uber came in, Oyo happened, Ola happened. So I mean, I was just following them like the way I used to follow sports, and I realized that it is such a great way to find your own greatness, to make a difference, to build something new. And yeah, so it was building up for 3 4 years, and then I started working on few ideas. Many of them didn't take off, and then suddenly we came off this idea about fan engagement in 2015 mid, towards 2015 end. And yeah, we
Mhm.
immediately sort of jumped into it. I mean, to answer your second part of the question, was it difficult to leave? I mean, it's always difficult to leave your comfort zone. It's a
Awesome.
comfort zone is something that you spend a lot of time and effort to make, to get that right job, to get that right salary, to find that work-life balance. But then, if you become too comfortable in it, then your growth slows down. So it was difficult. I had just had a kid, and my wife was not working at that point in time. So to completely leave my corporate career and get into this was a huge risk. But then I always think there's a right time for a right thing, and then if you don't do it, then you don't get that opportunity. So yeah, somehow it has worked out amongst a lot of ups and downs. But yeah,
No, no,
still playing. Yeah,
I think you're being a little too modest, Piyush. I'm sure the journey wasn't as easy as you're making it sound to be, but I'm very happy that it's worked out the way that you wanted,
yeah,
especially
it
with
is.
family and so
Yeah,
on.
yeah, it
Because
has. Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah,
one of the aspects that I've heard you talk about very passionately as well is the entire mental health aspect about entrepreneurs as well.
yeah.
And I don't think that there are enough conversations being had about that. What Because I know that entrepreneurship and starting up on your own is a very very lonely road. What are your
Correct.
thoughts on mental health for entrepreneurs and founders?
So I think it's mental health. Sometimes is also in a connotation kind of a way. People take it as something which is very negative, but it's like I always say that it's like when you have a stress, right, and when you have a
Mm,
fever. They are very similar things, right? Fever is something that happens to your body, and you're feeling feverish and you're feeling lazy, and there's a temperature. And stress is something that happens to your mind, which is
correct.
also something which is not ideal. So if we go ahead and take medicine for fever, and we sort of get back to normal, and then we sort of fix it, when people feel stressed and when they feel a little anxious, people should also address it. They should not think of it as something that will go away, or it might go away. But there are various ways that it goes away, and a lot of people don't even go through it. But in a startup journey, I've said it a few times in the last couple of weeks that I had read it earlier that everybody goes through a couple of near that moments, as they say. A lot of tough times you go through, and it's not
Yes.
planned. Nobody knows why it happens. Nobody can predict it. It's very difficult. So when you go through those times, you go through a lot of stress and anxiety. It keeps you awake because you have put everything in one basket, and it has to work. And during that time, I realized sometimes that okay, friends are great. I'm married to somebody who's my great friend. My wife is there as a help. I have a kid, and I play a lot of sports. But still, it is not something that can fix all your problems. So, so I reached out to somebody early this year, rather after the lockdown, after we had closed the last round, and I started talking to that person, and I realized that they add a lot of value to our own well-being. And I didn't go to and I didn't go to a doctor because I was ill or there was any problem. I just went because I realized that just the way we try and run to be fit, just the way we try and eat well to be fit, uh, it's the same way we should also talk to an external person to keep yourself mentally fit, always excited, happy, content, and those qualities needs to be inculcated to a certain extent in everybody, particularly in startup founders, because yeah, as I mentioned, it's a much longer and a much lonely battle. So that's my point of view, which is why I don't know. This story came out. Couple of journalists spoke with me, and then I suddenly realized it's being spoken about. I hope people realize about it. Yeah,
No, of course, and I want to thank you for for sharing as well, because that's the only way more people are going to find out and be comfortable with the fact that it's okay to go out and seek help even when you don't have all the answers.
correct.
So switching gears a little bit to the IPL, what plans do you at Ruta have in place for one of the biggest sporting extravaganzas of 2020, at least for India?
Well, yeah, IPL is really the main part of the sports calendar for every sports company, for every sports fan, particularly the cricket fan. And for us, we have this is our fifth IPL. 2016 was the first one when we were developing a test product, and 17, 18, 19, and now 20. This is the fifth IPL. I think amongst a lot of things that we have done in the IPLs before that, this is the time we are most prepared. For a number of reasons, we have got right backers, we have got good distribution thanks to Paytm, Samsung, etc. But most importantly, we have found a very strong product market fit with respect to sports fans. So while Hotstar and Star Sports are going to be taking care of your live streaming, there are multiple fantasy platforms like Paytm First Games, Dream 11, etc., where you can play fantasy. And there are content platforms where people go to check, read articles, etc. We are, pushing to disrupt the content space in IPL this year, in three different ways. Number one, we have multilingual scorecard, so we are ensuring scorecard is available for everybody speaking any language. Second is fantasy is a very very important part of the industry now, and we have developed multiple data models, multiple tools, multiple set of information through which people can learn about how fantasy teams can be made or pick fantasy teams from here and make it on any platform. And third is the entire user generated content around audio and video, which is people going live, doing commentary, discussing with other fans. So we have made the entire thing go audio video. Instead of you just chatting on WhatsApp or doing whatever, you can just go live on Router. Five people will join you. You can discuss matches. So the entire experience of fan engagement is what we are sort of reinventing. So yeah, so between the user-based commentary and user-based content, fantasy content, and the scorecard, hopefully it should turn out well for us. We are all prepared now.
I'm sure it will, and we can possibly reschedule a recap conversation once the IPL is over, just to
Yeah,
check how everything is gone.
absolutely.
Apart from cricket, I know that tennis is also one of the sports that you follow, and I'm sure that you were following the U.S. Open very recently. And one of the incidents that I wanted to have your perspective on, because obviously you're a CEO and the founder of a company, and you're responsible for the brand image of the company as well. The entire incident about Novak Djokovic and that entire line judge situation that happened. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was fortunately or unfortunately, I was watching it live, right?
Okay.
And uh, so one disclaimer: I'm a huge Federer fan
Okay.
from like last 20 years. Then I started liking Nadal also quite a bit because I think he's a different player altogether. But then when it comes to consistency, nobody is even close to what Djokovic has done over the last 10 years, particularly. He's too good. He's a machine. He can do anything. And I think he'll end up being the maximum Grand Slam winner and everything. Now, but he's had his while he's evolved into a much finer professional and as a player, and he has a decent following, he has not managed to achieve what Federer and Nadal has in terms of fan following or even brands chasing him. Now, when you look at that incident, one, he was cornered because he was losing a set and he was one break point down, and the way he reacted clearly it wasn't intentional. Nobody can say it was intentional. It was completely unintentional. But uh, for him to even attempt something like this was against the code of conduct, and then it hit a line judge, which is a error, right? Which cannot be pardoned. There are rules. So I
Of
think
course.
what he got was a fair judgment for him to be suspended from US Open. Uh, Maybe somebody could have got a little more than that, but I think for a player of his caliber, that is what they wanted to do, and I'm sure it will therefore now put a lot of players into perspective of being very careful about how they deal with fans and with officials. It's very important because millions of people are following these guys and they are idols, and if they react in a very erratic way, it doesn't help the sport.
True. But it also shows, I think, on some level, the growth of him as an athlete, because he definitely took it a lot more maturely than he would have probably a couple of years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he realizes that he's sitting in a golden moment, and he realizes that he can be an all-time great. So there is no
True.
way that he will like to push it up. Plus, he's a good guy. At the end of the day, he's a good guy. He comes from a country
Yes.
which has seen a lot of trouble, and to come out of that kind of a political environment and to be able to become such a great player and such a great brand ambassador of the game is quite amazing. I mean, I don't think anything beyond this should be done. I think he will learn and he will definitely come out better.
I agree. And I'm looking forward to everyone playing in Rome as well. They're all there
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
Masters.
yeah. They played. Both of them won their first round. Nadal and Djokovic. Yeah.
So, Piyush, the last time we were discussing, obviously, about the entire US Open incident and your take on Novak Djokovic and everything that happened with him.
Yeah.
My follow-up question to that was, with regards to the investment that you've been getting into Router as well. Congratulations, first of all, on all of that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Piyush, you've been getting investors both from India as well as from all over the world. What would you say is probably the major difference in pitching to an investor here in India versus a global investor, in your opinion, of course?
Yeah, it's a very important question. I'm glad you're asking it because it's actually two very different experiences when you're pitching to an Indian investor and then when you're pitching to a global investor. I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that gets highlighted very clearly when you pitch to say an Indian investor is the overall perspective they have of the Indian market, right?
Sure.
So their understanding of the overall audience profile, their understanding of monetization opportunities, the dynamics between Indian investors, and a lot of other things are very, very different from the way when you pitch to a global investor. Because when you're pitching to a global investor,
Mm-hmm.
you're not just pitching your business, you're pitching India as an opportunity. You are going to spend some time explaining to the investor about what the opportunity. So most of them would still know a bit about it, but since one is dealing in a particular category, it is always important to spend some time trying to make them understand what the opportunities are here, and then showing them various other good things which are happening and what are the other challenges. So one is you need to also kind of represent the market, which is the country that you're coming from. Second is you need to give them much more deeper insights. And third is that you need to be completely honest about what are the challenges in business and what are the opportunities. If I mean, you cannot get away with uh, saying things which aren't true. So I think these are the primarily the two differences. Of course, their approaches are very different. In India, uh, things do take some times, a lot of time because of the dynamics, because of the way things are right now in India. Wherein
Mm-hmm.
if you get a good global investor who really likes what you're building, they tend to move a little fast. But yeah, that's probably the difference. Yeah. One last difference that I want to highlight is and that is what we have seen, that when you're going for a global investor who doesn't have an office in India, they
Mm-hmm.
prefer having an Indian investor as a lead because they
Okay.
do not want to take the due diligence, responsibility of the round, and very rightly so because they are less aware about the market. So they do depend on an Indian partner who is doing the diligence more closely, and therefore is able to, sort of work with them to close the deal.
Absolutely. No, I think those are some really good points. Um, do business owners or founders such as yourself also use the pitch that I'm either building for the Indian market versus building for a global market, or I'm doing one first and then the other?
Yeah, again, a very interesting point. So, first and foremost, uh, India is a great opportunity and something that we all need to talk about.
Of
But then
course.
there are businesses which have the potential to grow outside India and which have a nature of something which is more of an international phenomena. Like in our case, for example, we are building game streaming and sports UGC platform, and there the potential is huge because it's in all the markets. So the way we operate is that first you define your short-term goal and the short-term market that you're trying to crack, and then you perhaps go into a long-term vision of how your product can go into different markets. May
Got it.
not be in the case of B2B, because in case of B2B, maybe from day one you're able to go outside India and you're able to grow. So I have not really built a platform like that or a company like that, so I won't be the best person to comment. And I like to believe they do get into simultaneous markets. They do get into different markets simultaneously. But in our case, in case of a B2C, it's a very simple formula. Pick any market that you want to, crack that market, get all your learnings in place, and then try and go into different markets once you have established yourself there.
Absolutely. And speaking of learnings, Piyush, what would you say have been the top two learnings for you for the last couple of years that you've been involved with Router?
Well, there have been many. Every day is a learning, and I'm not saying it for the sake of it. Every day I get up and I kind of tell myself, okay, what is the new challenge, and therefore what new learning is gonna come in. So I think
Hmm.
if you ask me to pick two, first learning is that one needs to completely be in tune with the market,
Okay.
because particularly India changes every 2 months, every 3 months, things are changing here, right? And if you are building something with blinders and you're not seeing what is happening around, whether in your category or categories around, you tend to miss the signals that market sends, which can be
Of
good
course.
or bad for you. uh, Good because there might be some opportunity for you to accelerate growth and accelerate revenue and etc. And bad because sometimes you don't see that there's a parallel category getting built which you are not aware of, and you can run out of business. The second thing is that, and I think this is something that COVID has taught to all of us, that uh, and I say this all the time, that every adversity brings an opportunity in itself. I mean, the entire startup market in India, or to a large extent even globally, is built around the recession or the turmoil that we saw in 2008-9, and then later on, how in India, for example, 2015-16 did a sort of a correction in the startup industry, and then more real businesses, more revenue focused businesses started coming in. And I think the third biggest phase that at least I have been a part of is the entire COVID environment, where be running a sports company, one day everything stops. Then what do? You cannot just sit back and wait for sports to restart. So you need to figure out, okay, what is your next option? So being on your toes, capitalizing on what is there in front of you, etc., is very very important. And if you see that the commonality between the two things that I said is being a very aware about things.
Correct.
As an entrepreneur, you need to be extremely aware about what is happening and be very honest to what is happening with you.
No, and you bring up a great point. And this was actually a question that I had an audience member email into me, which I was going to ask you subsequently, but it ties into your answer. Is as a startup entrepreneur, I think one of the most difficult things that you have to do is to decide what to focus on versus what to ignore.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Um,
exactly.
do you have some sort of philosophy? Do you have some sort of metric, or do you have a way in which you figure that out?
Well, fantastic question, because this is exactly what we are doing right now. We have both sports and gaming both growing for us, and it is
Correct.
very difficult to focus on two or give same weightage to the two verticals which are growing for you, unless you become very big and you have a very strong team, building both independently. So, and this is what differentiates um, us, an entrepreneur who survives, or is, I'll not say successful, because success is a very relative parameter, but this is what defines an entrepreneur who survives many lows and bad period, is the decision making that one takes. So
Mhm.
for us, our decision making is completely based on data. We rely on signals from users. We rely on the market signals. We rely on uh, how, for example, some new features are doing, etc., to take a decision on where to move. But this is just the observation which I want to talk about, that the decision to focus on to pinpoint on what you're going to focus in a business is a very difficult one, because that is what comes down to founders. If you may be focusing on something that may work or may not work. Like, for example, right now we are focusing on game and game streaming as a very important category, and this
Correct.
is a very very latest development for us. It's not something we have been building for 4 5 years. So, but that is a decision. Every signal suggests that possibly we can grow much faster in that segment, so might as well focus and build that up. So yeah, that's my answer for that.
So speaking of using data to make all of your decisions, obviously, a startup founder or an entrepreneur has to have some sort of gut feel as well. Since you're building currently for the Indian ecosystem and the Indian consumer, do you have any psychological insights or or tips on Indian consumers versus a global consumer?
Well, I think there are few insights or observations that I've had over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is, uh, if you look at Indian platforms or Indian apps versus global apps, you would see that we tend to make very complex or very, a product which has a lot of things going on over there, and Router is one of them. While in global products, you see that it's a very singular product. They make one thing and they stick to it much longer. Wherein here, because a lot of things are linked to each other, so we try and make a super app, at least out of the category, if not of bigger things. And
Very
and the
true.
reason it sometimes works in India is because as a society, as the kind of lives we live, we are much more equipped to deal with complex things, and therefore pick what works for us. And therefore it also reflects in the interaction that Indians have with technology. Secondly, the second thing that we see, and I think it's a golden rule of every successful business in India in the last couple of years, is how well you are able to adopt to a non-English market in India. Building for Hindi, building for South Indian languages, building for all the other regional languages. If you miss that point, you probably are going to miss a big, big market. And therefore, even if, for example, you don't have your product in, say, Hindi, you have to get into the shoes of a Hindi speaking audience and see that, okay, if he downloads your app, how would he react to that app? Are the words simple? So even if you have to keep it in English, is it something that he or she will be able to understand? And that is a very important part, because you have to respect the languages that people speak and are comfortable in. And the
Absolutely.
third, and then the third is basically, now it's not that big a problem, but sometimes, I mean, a couple of years back it used to be, which is how much data your app is consuming, how much space it is taking on your phone, etc., is also a very important part when you're looking at Indian consumers, because I mean, a lot of people still have limited. I mean, now data is sorted in India. I mean, on an average, an Indian has 10 GB data a month, which is excellent. But you still need to see that you're not guzzling, data, and you're not, your app is not very heavy, or it is not very slow, because there are so many choices in India that if there's any problem, they'll immediately delete and go off, and therefore it can hamper your business.
Absolutely. No, I think those are great insights. And I was reading recently that while you were talking about building for the non-English speaking market,
Yeah.
companies like even YouTube are adapting, saying that our UI UX is going to be so strong that people should be able to recognize the icons before they're able to actually recognize what's written and what they're for.
Exactly. Yeah. And also picture memory works the best. That is why
True.
you see consistency in icons across apps. So, for example, a successful app or a big app in India is using, say, X for a certain feature. People tend to copy that because it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel. Because if you know
Great.
that a product has 100 million users, and there by home they mean this symbol, there's no point making a new one. You're focusing on wrong things. So you're absolutely right that the design language is very important, and there are some amazing design people in the country who are making this very, very good. We are also blessed to have our design team, which is good. We're still learning, but I'm just saying that there is so much of inspiration around in products which have excellent UI and UX, and something that we can learn from them.
I think a great recent example of this was the entire Zoom interface versus what Geo created as well.
Yeah.
I know there
Yeah.
were a lot of memes online and there were a lot of people making fun of it, but as long as it's easy to use and people recognize it without having to open a user manual or contact support, why not if it works?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, why? I understand that people will say that, okay, so colors can be different. But then they both have blue colors, so you can't. I mean, why
Correct.
will they leave a brand color, right? As far as interface is concerned, I mean, there is just a way to dial the phone, right? I mean, when you're dialing a phone, everybody will show those 10 digits, and then there'll be a call button. I mean, it's exactly what Zoom or any calling is. Why
Absolutely.
reinvent it? I personally had no issues with it. I mean, I understand there was a lot of things about it, but that's smart business.
True.
They are not going to spend millions to educate people how to use it. They're saying you already know how to use it. We will rather focus on making a better technology, making it more easy for an Indian ecosystem, etc., to adopt, rather than redesigning things. So yeah, that's how things are. It's a great example. Yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
agree. Yeah,
So I'm going to now move to the audience questions part of the session. We've got
yeah,
some great questions that have come in, and some people unfortunately couldn't join us today,
yeah,
but they've sent some questions to us ahead of time. Collaborating with brands, I know that you're collaborating with quite a few brands for Router, for IPL as well. Congratulations on all the success that you're enjoying so far, and it's been a great
yeah,
first 10 games, I think.
yeah.
What is your advice to startups that are just starting out that want to look at collaboration with brands? Are brands only looking at the number of users or the engagement that you're getting, or are there other metrics that they should pay attention to as well?
Yeah. So firstly, I think, I mean, we have a long way to go when it comes to brand monetization. I think success is a little far, but being very humble, I think it's we have to really learn and learn a lot in that. So and this is where I also spent a good amount of time in marketing and advertising,
Mhm.
and therefore I understand the space, because there was a point when I used to buy inventory, I was the buyer, right? And right now, me and my team are the sellers. So to answer your question, I think one of the first things when we are looking at a brand association is how well do you understand the brand. It is not just about the logo or their ad or their creative or their brand ambassador. It is about understanding what the product is, what is the USP of the product, what is the advertising trying to say, and most importantly, who's the end consumer. So if you go to a brand which will not find its audience on your platform, it's never going to
Sure.
be a right thing to do. Like, for example, if we go to a Make My Trip and say that, okay, we want to advertise this, I mean, I know the answer because we've met them, and they said very nicely, they said our average age is 29, 30 and above, right? And while we have a
Correct.
very young audience, so they said it doesn't gel. And I said, exactly, that's right. So audience is very, very important. Number two is the reason brands are looking to work with newer. So brands always have a lot of options, right? So brands have a different need. One, they have a need of reach. When they're looking at reach, they will go for
Mhm.
numbers. They will go to platforms which have a better reach, so that they are able to reach out to a far bigger audience, rather than a particular specific audience. But when they're looking at engagement, when they're looking at saying that, okay, 10% of people who see my ads should take an action which should result in whatever is their objective. In that case, a platform which is new, which is more engaging, which is not just blatant advertising, works. I mean, somewhere where we also work for a few categories, that we are all about engagement. We are not about just people coming and passively consuming content. They get engaged, they message, they do whatever, and therefore our
Absolutely.
CTAs our CTRs are much higher than an average industry. So engagement is something that you need to look at, and you need to look at how you can customize. And the third thing is, you need to have a good reputation of your product on the Google Play Store and elsewhere for you to get them on board, like app ratings. How are people perceiving your brand? How well known is your product is a very important part when you're going to a brand. Like, we suffer with that. We are still not very well known in the market, while there are some platforms which are advertising and etc. So the the overall visibility of the publisher is also very important when you're trying to crack a brand.
Agreed. No, I think that's a great answer, Piyush. We have Elsa asking us, and this is something that I'm always curious as well.
Yeah.
What is on your reading list, or what is the content that you're currently consuming?
Well, I read 3 4 books at the same time.
Okay.
I used to do it for a very long time, and then I saw one of Naval's podcast, and when he said that reading one book at a time is like really losing out on a lot of opportunities. So I also have 3 4 different books that I read. So I'm reading 3 4 different books. One, I'm definitely reading. There's a book on Amazon called Bezonomics. If you have, I in fact have it here. Let me show you 2 3 books that I'm reading. So
Sure.
this is a book. It's called Bezonomics. Yeah, it's a very interesting book on the entire culture of Amazon. It's not about how Amazon was built or anything. It's about what is the culture of Amazon, why Amazon is what it is, and this book is something that I'm reading.
Okay.
Since I'm also working on a sort of a book that sometimes I will write, which is has something to do with sports. It's a story of a fan and everything. So I'm myself doing a lot of secondary research on Manchester United. So I'm reading a lot of books around that. Like I'm reading Sir Alex Ferguson's autobiography again, right?
Okay.
And then there is a third book which I can't find here, which is a book about. It is written by by one of the English selectors called Ed Smith, which is about what sports teaches you about life.
Very nice.
Which is it's a very breezy read. That's about they're trying to correlate life and sports and everything. So yeah, I mean, again, I'm not very. I mean, reading has been very haywire here and there. There are a couple of things which are opened on Kindle, and I keep browsing it through it. But these are the things. What I also read regularly, and something that I've consciously tried to subscribe to now, and I
Hmm.
spend about 20 minutes every day is Ken, Morning Context, ET Prime. I've taken all three subscription, and then there is a football or a sports platform called The Athletic, which is mind blowing. It's the best thing in the world when it comes to sports journalism. So yeah, these are the 4 subscriptions that I kind of try and read if there is a good article there.
And I recently saw on Twitter that you were appreciating some work on ESPN Crick Info as well.
Yeah. So
Which I like.
that's there. So Twitter is a great way for you to stumble across best. I mean, the kind of people you follow literally
True.
defines your growth, according to me. I'm a huge fan of Twitter anyways. You've seen that I'm a big fan of Twitter. I attribute a lot of things that I've learned in life is through Twitter. And again, since I follow some very interesting people who have some amazing insights, that article about ESPN Cricket Info, which they had about Tevatia and how he basically has dealt with his life over the last 2 3 years is mind blowing. Anyways, ESPN Cricket Info, when it comes to sports journalism, is gold. You know, Sharda Ogra, Siddharth Manga, a lot of other these people, a lot of
Absolutely.
people used to write before. They write so beautifully. I mean, that's the only piece of Indian sports long piece or a long format, you know, read that I actually do. Otherwise, it's all,
No, I
repeats and
completely
repeats.
agree with you that they've managed to retain, if not exceed, the quality of their content over the past couple of years as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I have another question coming in from Hardik as well. That apart from reading, what else do you do in your downtime? I'm sure you watch sports.
No, so I play. For playing sport is my main thing. Not reading. Reading comes second or third. For me, I play badminton. So between badminton and tennis, I used to play badminton and squash for 10 years, but I've just
Okay.
squash is not possible because of restrictions, and tennis have just picked up like 2.5 months back. So between badminton and tennis on court, I clock maybe 10 hours a week.
Oh, very
So
nice.
few days 2 hours, and then at least 1 hour every day I clock. So that is my main go-to thing. Uh, then if I'm not on call, some music is on in the background, something like right from morning till night. And then of course I'm reading, and then I have a great buddy in my 4 year old son with whom I sort of do whatever. That's the best part about life right now. Yeah.
No, that's great to hear, Piyush. Preeti's asking, how do you stay focused? I know that sports must be helping, but
No, it's not easy to stay focused. I'm not actually very good at it. Not a very good example of staying focused. I think what keeps me okay to a certain extent, if I'm able to be focused, I think sports certainly helps. You're absolutely right.
Mhm.
It takes out a lot of negative energy, and that allows you to stay focused. Secondly, uh, I'm a very spiritual person in general. I have a very strong belief in the Almighty God. I have certain things, my prayers and everything that I do. That helps me stay very focused because there is somebody up there who's looking after you. And the third thing is music. Music really, really helps me stay focused. Like I listen to different kind of music through the day.
Okay.
I start with some spiritual. When I get up in the morning, I like to listen to some bhajan and all, and then something, and towards the evening you are listening. So different kind of music through the day. If you listen to the same kind of music through the day, your mood will remain same, right?
True.
So I always believe that if you listen to at least 4 or 5 genres and pick whatever is you feel like listening, then it affects your mood a lot. So yeah, I mean, but still, I'm not the best example of staying focused. I tend to go all over the place. Yeah.
No, but I mean, seeing this, the success that you've achieved and the success of Router, I'm sure that you are able to, compartmentalize your thinking as well. I have one last question for you. Anjali asks, what is the most fun part about your job and what is the toughest part about your job as a founder and CEO?
Yeah, great question. So fun part about my job is the fact that what entrepreneurship gives somebody, something which is priceless, is freedom. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Freedom to learn, freedom to make mistakes, freedom to fail, freedom to succeed, freedom to follow your dream, financial freedom to a certain extent because you are able to chart your course of the way you make money over life, maybe sometimes faster, maybe sometimes very slower. So what I really enjoy about being a founder is this freedom. I'm not bound by anything. If I make mistake, it is my own. If I learn, like learning can be very fast, etc. So that is a very important. I mean, you have time. You buy time being an entrepreneur.
True.
You can decide to do whatever. You can work 24 hours a day, and yet you are doing it. You're not working for somebody or doing whatever. The tough part about being a founder and as your company grows is, how do you manage the entire finances and revenue and fundraising and salaries and tech cost and everything. I think that is a very, very, that's a very, very important part of a company being successful or not. And for me, where I don't come from a background like that, it's been a great learning experience where I had to literally get down to learning how accounting is done, how to manage money. Because when investors are giving you money, it's not for you to just spend. It's about you being extremely rational. You get into a habit of negotiating at each and every level. You believe in cash in hand, so you try and retain money for as long as possible. Revenue becomes a focus. Compliances are huge, huge as your company grows. Legal compliances, financial compliances. You appoint different agencies to handle you do all. So this is a very tough part. I mean, you cannot ignore it. And personally, what I think, you cannot give it to somebody else.
You
It
can't.
needs to be with the founding team. One of the founders need to take this up as a responsibility and deliver all the time. You cannot leave it by chance. It's a very important part of the overall vehicle moving smoothly.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite quotes is that if you really want to improve yourself, or one of the greatest personality development ways is to become an entrepreneur, because
Yeah,
it
yeah,
forces
absolutely.
you to evolve in ways that a corporate job will probably never test you.
So see, I'm and since you mentioned that, I had a great corporate career. I was working with
Mhm.
best of the companies, and they were learning a lot. The thing, so and there's nothing wrong with if people continue doing that and
Of
everything.
course.
But as an entrepreneur, what really gives you a great opportunity is to chart your own course, and therefore, and then with great power comes great responsibility. A very famous Spider-Man dialogue that I never forget, that if you have the power to literally put your destiny in place, then you also have a great responsibility that you don't do anything wrong. So yeah, but it's all good. I think quite blessed to be
Absolutely.
here. Yeah.
No, and I love your positive energy and your attitude, Piyush. So, anything else that you want to talk about that we might have left out? Anything you wanted to mention?
No, not really. I think one of the aspects that perhaps we didn't talk too much about, and I think just as a parting note, I like to
Hmm.
say, if it helps somebody, is that uh, you know running a startup or becoming an entrepreneur as such looks like a very individual activity, or maybe a couple of people come together and do it. But it is far from being individual because it's all about the people you pick who will work with you. Your early colleagues, your early employees, then at the right time you upgrade and get senior people, and then at the next level you get very senior people who are much more senior and much more knowledgeable than you, and therefore can run the business much, or are a part of a business much better than you. This aspect of running a company is sometimes very undervalued, very less spoken about. If you see so many successful people around you, they have succeeded because they have picked the right people to work with them, and to
Absolutely.
help their dreams come true. And 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 for me also, it's been because of the team that we had, that people who are no longer working with us, or people who are still working with us but are giving their best to make this platform successful. I think that is one aspect of starting up, which is very important, and something that I tell people, that pick your co-founder very, 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 very responsibly. Do not rush into picking your partner, because it's a marriage, and
True.
divorce in this case is more ugly than uglier than what you can imagine. Right? It's not just about two people saying, okay, we'll not work together. It's about a lot of legal, financial complications, a lot of other things that happens. So pick your co-founders very, very carefully. Pick your early team members very, very carefully. And still you will make mistake, but it's fine. You need to be at least conscious about the fact that it's a very important part of starting up.
No, I think those are great words to end the session on. I think we can do an entire new session just on what qualities do you look for in a co-founder and how do you pick a co-founder as well.
Yeah, I would love to talk about it, because I've been blessed with right kind of people at different stages of our journey. And even Dipesh, who's my co-founder right now, he's just amazing. He's the one who's running the show, frankly. And I hope, yeah, people get right people to work with, and that's how you make a successful run.
No, absolutely. And Piyush, I wish you all the success. I hope you hit all the metrics when it comes to the IPL, 20 million users and beyond. And
Yeah,
hopefully we get a chance to talk to you again when you're at either 50 million or 100 million users at Router.
absolutely, Siddharth. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a great conversation. A lot of times these conversations about the questions that you ask, and I mean, rightly, you have done so well in building this series, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So yeah, we'll speak soon, hopefully.
Absolutely. Stay connected, Piyush, and I look forward to catching up in person, hopefully on the other end of all of this.
Absolutely. You take care. See you. Thanks for
Take
your
care.
team.
Thank you, Piyush.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone, for watching another exciting episode of the CEO's Chair. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you.